Hey everyone, my name is Hannah Waltz and I currently serve as the Logistics Chair on the Executive Board for ACS on Campus Relay for Life at the University of South Carolina. I'm coordinating this same initiative at my university and it's been really successful so far, so I'm glad that you're interested. With a potential lack of in-person service opportunities in the near future, I really hope you'll take advantage of this one. I'm looking for Chemo Cap donations for the Hope Lodge. You'll receive 2 community service hours for each Chemo Cap that you make. The first one might take you a little bit longer, but you'll get faster once you get used to the technique. Please remember that chemo treatments can often lead to irritation, tenderness, or blistering of the scalp. Because of this, we have to use soft, non-irritating yarn that doesn't contain animal fibers, harsh dyes, or chemicals. I'm attaching a link to a PDF document in the description of this video, which has a list of approved yarn brands. Unfortunately, the Hope Lodge can't accept chemo caps made from yarn not included on that list. In addition, the Hope Lodge also asks that you keep your chemo caps away from animal dander, smoking, and other strong fragrances. Completed chemo caps should be between 7 and 9 inches long, good quality, and made on a 9 or 9.5 inch loom so that they fit an adult head. I have a couple examples for you here. They're very similar. They're both soft, made with approved yarn, a little bit stretchy, and about 8 inches long. The only difference is that the blue chemo cap has a brim and the yellow one does not. If you'd like to make a brim or not is entirely up to you. In the video instructions that follow, I do explain how to make a brim, but if that seems too difficult or you don't want to do that step, that's fine. You'll receive 2 community service hours regardless of if you make a brim or not. If you choose not to make a brim, the bottom of your chemo cap should naturally roll and you'll end up with something that looks like this. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started. For your supplies, you will need a ruler or other measuring tool, scissors, loom, hook, and needle, and 1 or 2 skeins of yarn. I've also included the 2 chemo caps for my introduction. As you can see, this one has a brim, and this one does not. The bottom of the yarn has been allowed to roll up. They're both about 8 inches long. Either method is fine, but I do explain how to create a brim in this video. Skip that step if you don't want to do so. You'll receive 2 community service hours regardless of if you create a brim or not. For this demonstration, we'll be using 2 colors so that it's easier to see what's happening. It's important that your chemo cap is not see-through. Patients typically want their heads covered well. You want to use 2 strands. For this example, as I said, we'll be using 2 different colors, but you can use 2 ends of the same skein of yarn if you would prefer. Remember to choose your yarns from the list of approved brands. The first thing to do is to locate the peg on the side of the loom. The most important thing is to secure your yarn well so that it doesn't come loose. This helps hold the tension in your chemo cap. If you're familiar with a slip knot, feel free to use that technique. I personally like to do a loose knot, tied once around the peg that I can undo later. Remember, you're treating your 2 strands of yarn as though they are one. I've already secured this one. Now, we'll start going around the pegs. With a slow clockwise motion, go around each peg once with your yarn. You'll become more efficient as you get used to this motion. You want to maintain a relatively constant tension. Not super tight, but not too loose either. Something that feels secure but comfortable. Remember to treat the 2 strands of yarn as though they are one. Once you've gone all the way around, you'll begin pushing this yarn down towards the bottom of the pegs. I like to do this about halfway. Use one hand to secure the last peg so your yarn does not unravel. Use the other hand to gently press down on the yarn so that it goes at least halfway down the pegs. You'll work your way around the loom doing this. As you can see, the yarn has been pushed down towards the bottom of each peg. This is very important. Also, you need to be sure to start and end each row at the same place, so look out for that little peg on the side. That's your marker. Okay, so now that we've pushed that yarn down, we're going to do the exact same motion we did before. Carefully clockwise around each peg with the yarn. You'll wrap all the way around. You should have 2 loops around each peg. With one hand, secure the end of your yarn. With the other hand, you're going to use the hook to pull the bottom loops over the entire peg, leaving the top loops where they are. The first peg is typically the most difficult, and that's completely normal. Work your way around the entire loom with this same technique. There's a little divot in the front side of each peg to make it easier for the hook to get around the yarn. Once you've done this all the way around, your chemo cap should look like this. Press down on your yarn. Again, use one hand to secure the end and use the other to press it down. We want it about halfway up the pegs, and you'll work your way around the entire loom. Now that we've pressed it down, we're going to do the same looping motion all the way around the loom. This is the same technique you'll use throughout making this chemo cap. You'll continue this process as you go. Okay. All right, and again, we're keeping track of that little peg on the side to make sure we start and end at the same place every time. We'll use that hook with the same technique, pulling those bottom threads up over the top, and we'll do that all the way around. As you keep adding rows, the chemo cap will start to take shape on the inside of the loom. As you can see, we've completed about 3 or 4 rows. The chemo cap is really starting to take shape on the inside of the loom. Now that we've got our shape established, we can go ahead and remove the knot around that peg on the side. If you need to use your hook to loosen it, that's fine as well. Make sure you don't trim this thread. We'll secure it at the end. Just tuck it on the inside of your loom, and that way it stays out of your way. We've completed another row. We could keep using the same technique where we secure our yarn with one hand and use our other hand with the hook to pull up the bottom loops on every peg. However, there's another technique now that we've untied that knot on the side that can free up both hands. You'll do the same peg as normal, the first one, but then you'll go back one peg before the yarn, and that holds your extra yarn in place. This way, it frees up your other hand so you can focus on holding the loom as you work your way around. All right, so we've got a few inches of our chemo cap on the inside there, and we're going to go ahead and measure that to see if we have enough to start our brim. So you're going to gently unroll it like so. You don't want to pull too hard. All right, so we're measuring. This is where your ruler or other tool comes in, and we're right about 3 inches, which is perfect for our brim. So as you can see around the outside, we've already pushed the threads down, but we haven't added a second row of yarn on top of the first, right? So this is going to be your second row. You're going to follow the stitches from the pegs to the inside, as she's pointing out, and you're going to find that loop, all right? And that's the first row that you did. And you're going to bring that loop up and over and hook it onto your peg, just like that. And now you'll work your way around using either your fingers or the hook, depends on the person, what they prefer. Just like that, hooking it over the pegs as you go. And you're gonna work your way around your entire loom doing this. You wanna make sure you grab both threads, the ones farthest out. You don't wanna grab too much, but you wanna make sure you get both of them. And you're gonna work your way around the loom like this. All right, so we've gotten our brim situated. We've brought those loops back around the pegs all the way around. And if you'll notice that extra piece of yarn on that side, yes, that is the yarn that we started with. So that's what was tied around the side. Okay, so we're gonna leave that alone for now. We'll take care of that later. As you can see, we've now got 2 loops on each peg. And so we're going to handle this the way we have been the whole time. We're going to use that needle, or the hook rather, to hook over the pegs. You're going to pull the bottom one over the top. And this is the way you're going to finalize your brim. Do this all the way around. And now the brim is done. we've gone ahead and pushed down those threads towards the bottom of each peg, and you're going to stick with that same motion we've been doing the whole time, clockwise around each peg, working your way around the loom. And remember, you always want to start on the peg just to the right of that starting small peg on the side as you work your way around. And you're going to keep going with this exact same process, looping around near the top of the pegs, then using the hook to pull the bottom threads up and over the top. And you'll keep doing this, working your way around the loom until you have between 8 and 9 inches of chemo cap on the inside of that loom. All right, so we've finished with most of the hat. As you can see, we've got a lot of chemo cap there inside of the loom. So we're gonna go ahead and measure that using our ruler or other measuring device. You're gonna measure from the inside. I recommend hooking it around the peg, and you wanna make sure that you take into account that curve that happens. There we go, so we're gonna measure down to the base, and we are at just over 8 inches, which is perfect. Remember, you wanna aim for between 8 and 9 inches. Okay, so now that we've done that, we know we have adequate length. Note that we only have 1 loop around each peg. We don't have 2. If for any reason you have 2, go ahead, go back through, use the hook like we've been doing, pull the bottom one over the top, because you only want to have 1 loop around each peg for this process. Okay, so first thing you want to do is take your yarn and wrap it a little bit over halfway, 3/4 of the way around the outside of the loom. And this is just eyeballing it for length. You could also estimate about 1 foot, 18 inches, whatever works for you, and you're gonna cut it off. So we're gonna trim that. Awesome. Okay, so now we're done with our skeins of yarn. We have this extended bit right there. Okay, so now that we've cut our thread, we're gonna go ahead, or our yarn, excuse me, we're gonna go ahead and put that through the needle. And make sure you wanna get both pieces of yarn through the needle, exactly like that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna start at the beginning like we have been, and you're gonna carefully feed the needle through the yarn and pull it off the peg like that. And then you're gonna pull the needle through. So that yarn, we've threaded it off of the peg like that. So it has come off of the peg. And we're gonna work our way around the entire loom the same way we have been. You're gonna thread through each, and you wanna make sure you get both colors of yarn, or both pieces of yarn if you're using the same color with that needle, and you wanna make sure both yarn strands stay threaded through the needle as well. You don't wanna accidentally lose one of those. And we'll continue around doing that throughout the entire loom like this. All right, so we're gonna keep going. We're gonna finish up these last few pegs. And when you're done, your chemo cap should be completely off of your loom. Excellent. Okay, so we're done with that. So now, oh, yes. So what we've basically done is created a drawstring, right? So you wanna gather that by pulling on that thread, on that yarn, and you're gonna gather it up nice and tight at the top there, because that's the crown of the head. We don't want a big hole. Perfect. So now that we've done that, we're going to tie a nice tight knot with those 2 pieces of yarn. You want to make sure you double knot this so that it doesn't come unraveled in the wash or anything like that. So now that we've got that knot ready, we're gonna go ahead and re-thread that needle because we have all this extra thread. So we're gonna tuck that yarn on the inside. Awesome, so you're gonna push the needle through right at the center, right in where the hole is. Try to push it straight through, and then you're gonna turn the chemo cap inside out and pull that yarn out. Perfect. Okay, so now we have that. We're gonna go ahead and use the needle to push it through some of the strands on the inside, if you can see that. And that's just gonna help secure that yarn.
And after you've done that a couple of times, you're going to go ahead and take your needle off and trim that thread. Perfect. So now we go to those extra little threads at the bottom that we've had, and you're going to do something very similar, make a knot. You don't want to do this too aggressively tight or you will cause the hat to gather, okay? So we've tied it nice, carefully but tightly, all right? And then we're going to double knot that as well. Perfect. And then we trim off those excess threads with the scissors. And that, we must turn right side out, is a completed chemo cap.
And there's your completed chemo cap. We'll communicate details for a drop-off time and location where we will accept your donations and log your service hours. Details will be sent out later. Please fill out the short survey linked to the Google Doc so that we know to email you with updates. So, in summary, sign up for email updates on the Google survey, check your yarn against the required list, purchase your supplies, watch the directions in the rest of this video, and start making chemo caps. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. My email is hewaltz@email.sc.edu. I look forward to hearing from you and working with you. Thank you.